So imagine spending your entire life obsessively polishing a luxury car. I mean, you spend years meticulously perfecting the paint job, you upgrade the interior, and you're just searching endlessly for the absolute perfect passenger to sit in the passenger seat.
Right, getting everything to look flawless on the surface.
Exactly. But, and here's the crazy part, you completely refuse to ever learn how to actually drive the car.
Which totally defeats the purpose of having it in the first place.
Right. And according to the psychologist and philosopher Erich Fromm, that is precisely what most of us are doing with love. Welcome to today's Deep Dives, where our mission is to completely rewire how you think about human connection. We are digging into Fromm's landmark book, The Art of Loving.
Yeah, and it really is a landmark text. It demands a profound shift in perspective for the reader.
It really does. We want to move love from this, mysterious lucky accident that you just hope happens to you into a masterable skill, something you actively practice.
And when you change your definition of love from a passive event to an active practice, it forces a complete reevaluation of nearly every relationship in your life. Because we spend so much time immersed in the mythology of love.
Oh, absolutely. The movies, the songs.
Right, watching the romantic comedies, listening to the pop songs, just hoping the stars align so we can, quote-unquote, fall into it. Yeah. We really do treat it like a winning lottery ticket.
We totally do.
Yeah.
And yet, despite craving it constantly, we completely ignore the foundational premise of Fromm's book, which is that loving is an art form.
Yes, just like medicine or carpentry or playing an instrument, it requires deep theoretical understanding, continuous practice, and ultimate concern.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit, because we spend zero time developing the actual faculty of loving.
Yeah.
Like learning how to drive in that car analogy.
Exactly. We focus entirely on the object, finding the right person.
Yes, rather than the function of loving. And, reading through Fromm's arguments, you quickly realize how much our economic reality completely bleeds into our emotional reality. It's wild.
It is. The psychology here suggests that our contemporary culture's obsession with buying things and mutually favorable exchange has totally infiltrated how we view relationships.
Like modern happiness is basically defined by the thrill of the shop window, right?
Right. Looking at everything we can afford and trying to get the absolute best deal. And that exact transactional mindset maps directly onto human connection.
So we aren't looking at potential partners as complex, unique individuals.
No, we evaluate them as attractive packages on from terms the personality market.
The personality market. That concept feels entirely too relevant today, I mean, especially if you think about modern dating apps.
Oh, it's the perfect modern example. It's literal window shopping.
Right. We are literally swiping through a catalog of human beings just looking for a bargain. We want someone whose social value perfectly matches or maybe slightly exceeds our own overt and hidden assets.
And what constitutes an attractive package fluctuates wildly based on cultural fashion, too. It's not a static thing.
Yeah, the text mentions that in the 1920s, like a tough, drinking, smoking flapper girl was the highly sought-after ideal. But a decade later, the market shifted, and fashion demanded domesticity.
And men experience it too, shifting from the cultural demand for aggressive ambition to a demand for social tolerance, all just to maintain their exchange value on the market.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
It really is. The required traits constantly shift, but the underlying transactional framework remains totally fixed. Two people believe they are in love when they feel they have secured the absolute best object available on the market, relative to their own limitations.
I mean, it operates on the exact same logic as commercial real estate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there's a huge flaw in that system.
Well, yeah, I was actually going to push back on this a bit, because if two people meet, right, and their exchange values perfectly align, they look good on paper, they share the same socioeconomic goals, they find each other attractive, why does that initial explosive excitement almost always fade into mutual boredom?
That is the million-dollar question. Shouldn't a perfect market transaction result in lasting satisfaction?
You would think so, but it doesn't.
What's fascinating here is that the commodification itself is the very mechanism that guarantees the failure.
Wait, really? How does that work?
Well, when two strangers first meet, and the walls of isolation between them suddenly break down, that initial miracle of sudden intimacy is exhilarating. But because the entire connection was built on a shallow exchange of commodities rather than a deeply practiced faculty of loving, it just cannot sustain itself.
I see. So the novelty wears off.
Right. As the intimacy loses its miraculous novel character, their underlying antagonisms, insecurities, and disappointments inevitably emerge. They mistake the sheer intensity of their initial infatuation for the depth of their love.
Wow. That completely reframes the typical narrative of falling out of love. The infatuation wasn't actually love at all. Its intensity just proved the immense depth of their preceding loneliness.
Exactly. It's a symptom of loneliness, not a sign of true connection.
Which begs the question, if playing the personality market is such a flawed, ultimately doomed approach, why are we so desperate to pair off in the first place? Why do we care so intensely?
To understand that, we actually have to trace this all the way back to the dawn of humanity.
Okay, let's go back. Setting the scene.
When humans emerged from the animal kingdom, we achieved something unprecedented. We transcended nature. We were torn away from the blind, instinctual harmony that animals maintain with their environment.
We developed reason, self-awareness, and imagination.
Right. But that awareness carries a devastating psychological burden. It's the realization of our incredibly short lifespan and our utter aloneness and helplessness against the chaotic forces of the universe.
That is terrifying. We basically became trapped inside our own minds, fully aware that we are separate from everything around us.
This state of separateness is the fundamental source of all human anxiety. It's an unbearable prison. To be separate means to be cut off, completely unable to actively grasp the world.
It arouses deep shame and a profound existential guilt.
Exactly. Every human being, whether a caveman, a Roman soldier, or a modern factory worker, is haunted by the exact same overriding imperative. How do we overcome this terrifying separateness and achieve union?
And I love how Fromm's interpretation of the Adam and Eve myth captures this perfectly. Because usually, that story is filtered through this prudish 19th century moral lens.
Right. The idea that Adam and Eve eat the apple, realize they are naked, and feel ashamed of their bodies.
Yeah, but the psychology points to something much deeper. The shame wasn't about physical nakedness at all. When they ate from the tree of knowledge, they basically became self-aware. They suddenly recognized their differences and their profound separateness.
They recognized their separation, but crucially, they had not yet learned to love one another.
Right. Because when God questions them about eating the fruit, what does Adam do? He immediately blames Eve.
He throws her right to the wolves to defend himself. They are physically standing next to each other, but emotionally, they are completely isolated strangers.
The awareness of human separation, without the reunion provided by love, is the true origin of shame. It is the core human problem.
And human history is essentially a catalog of all the flawed, desperate ways we have tried to cure this isolation.
And we haven't exactly picked the healthiest coping mechanisms throughout history, have we?
No, definitely not. People attempt various false cures before they ever arrive at true love. The first historical method involves orgiastic states.
Okay, like what? Trances?
Yeah. Trances, often drug-induced, or rituals of sexual orgies common in certain primitive tribes. They effectively eliminate the feeling of separateness because they are intense, total, and involve both the mind and the body simultaneously.
So for that fleeting moment, the outside world and the painful awareness of self completely dissolve.
Exactly. The fatal flaw, however, is that they are totally transitory. The trance wears off.
And in modern culture, when people pursue these orgiastic states alone through things like alcoholism, drug addiction, or compulsive sexual behavior, it becomes deeply destructive.
Right. In a primitive tribe, the ritual was a shared, socially approved experience. But the modern addict wakes up from the high feeling even more intensely, agonizingly separated and guilty than before they started.
It just makes the isolation worse. So society generally moves toward the second, far more prevalent cure for isolation, herd conformity.
Yes. Herd conformity is the attempt to soothe the anxiety of separateness by blending in perfectly. Dictatorships force this conformity through terror and the threat of violence.
But democracies achieve it far more subtly.
Right.
Through suggestion, routine, and propaganda.
Exactly. The individual becomes the archetypal 9-to-5er. You dress similarly to your peers, consume the same media, hold the approved opinions, and adopt the standard routines.
You try to become completely indistinguishable from the herd so you never have to confront the terror of standing alone. But yeah, I have a hard time squaring this idea of herd conformity with our current culture.
How so?
Well, we live in an era totally obsessed with personal branding. Everyone constantly broadcasts how unique they are. People are desperate to stand out, not blend in.
It's a really vital observation, but the text makes a brilliant counter-argument here. Modern individualism is largely an illusion masking profound conformity.
An illusion, like we just think we're being unique.
Exactly. Our uniqueness is often just the initial stamped on a mass-produced handbag, or picking one slightly different corporate aesthetic over another. We eagerly buy into advertising slogans that assure us a product is different precisely because we are starving for a genuine difference that has been culturally eradicated.
Oh, wow. So we cling to superficial distinctions to hide the fact that our daily routines, thoughts, and desires are totally prefabricated by the society around us.
We are just customizing our conformity, and our very concept of equality has been severely distorted to serve this mass aggregation.
Distorted how?
Well, during the Enlightenment, thinkers like Kant defined equality with immense dignity. It meant that no human being must ever be used as a means to an end for another. Every individual is an end in themselves.
But today,
Today, equality has been warped into the sameness of automatons. We have systematically eliminated the natural polarity and friction between people to ensure the societal machine functions smoothly without friction. We don't want unique, unpredictable individuals. We want interchangeable human atoms.
which is an incredibly bleak diagnosis of modern life, just a sea of interchangeable atoms. But there is a third attempted cure mentioned in the text, right? Creative activity.
Yes. The artist uniting with their canvas, or the carpenter uniting with the wood. It is productive, and it temporarily bridges the gap between the creator and the outside world.
But it ultimately falls short of solving the core human problem, doesn't it? Because it is not an interpersonal union.
Exactly. It doesn't bridge the devastating gap between two human beings.
So what does this all mean? If orgiastic states are fleeting, if herd conformity turns us into interchangeable robots, and if creative activity leaves us interpersonally alone, we are left with only one true answer to human isolation.
Interpersonal union. Joining with another person.
But we have to be incredibly careful here, because society frequently disguises toxic psychological fusion as love.
Yes, we must strictly differentiate between symbiotic union and mature love. Symbiotic union has its biological model in the pregnant mother and the fetus.
They are two bodies, but they live as one entirely dependent organism.
Right, and psychologically, this manifests in relationships as a kind of sickness.
Yeah.
It often takes the form of masochism, or what we might today call extreme codependency.
Where a person submits themselves entirely to someone else, letting the partner guide them, define them, and essentially be their oxygen so they never have to face the anxiety of isolation alone.
You see this romanticized everywhere in pop culture, the whole "you complete me" narrative. A person essentially becomes a psychological appendage to their partner.
And the active counterpart to that is sadism, right?
Yes. Sadism involves dominating someone else, making them a part of you to artificially inflate your own sense of power and escape your aloneness. Fromm uses historical dictators to illustrate this sadistic symbiotic urge on a macro level.
But it happens daily, in microscopic ways in domestic life too.
Definitely. Both the masochist and the sadist achieve a kind of fusion, but they do it at the complete cost of their own integrity.
Which brings us to the actual solution: mature love.
And it relies on a beautiful paradox. In mature love, two beings become one, and yet they remain two.
You completely overcome the agonizing sense of isolation, but you fully preserve your own individuality and integrity. You do not get swallowed up, and you do not swallow the other person.
This dynamic echoes Spinoza's distinction between active and passive effects. A passive passion, like envy or blind ambition, is something that happens to you. You are driven by it. You are a victim of a compulsion.
But mature love is an action. It is an active power.
Yes, it is a standing in, not a falling for. And the absolute most fundamental expression of this active character is that love is primarily about giving, not receiving.
Now, we really have to redefine what giving actually means in this context. Because if a person is operating with that transactional marketing character we discussed earlier, they hear the word giving and immediately equate it with giving something up.
Right, they view it as a sacrifice. If you give without receiving equal value in return, you are being cheated.
That framing turns giving into an impoverishment. But Fromm uses very primal physical biology to completely flip this idea.
He really does. Think of a mother giving her milk to her infant, or a potent man giving his semen.
They are not being deprived or impoverished. The very act of giving is the highest expression of their physical strength, their internal wealth, and their aliveness.
Not giving would literally be painful. Giving is an overflowing of vitality.
I love that. And Karl Marx touched on a similar dynamic regarding human connection, right?
He did. Marx noted that if you love without calling forth love, if your love doesn't naturally produce love in return, then your love is impotent. When you give truly, you are giving of your life.
You give your joy, your interest, your understanding, your patience, your humor.
Exactly. And in doing so, you organically enhance the other person's aliveness. You cannot help but bring something to life in them, which inevitably reflects back to you.
You aren't giving in order to receive. You give because it is a joyous expression of your own power. The receiving happens naturally as a byproduct of that shared aliveness.
That distinction alone changes everything.
It really does. It means the burnout we so often feel in modern relationships isn't necessarily from giving too much. It is from giving transactionally and feeling we aren't getting our expected return on investment.
Love isn't draining your internal battery for someone else. It is the realization that you are the generator.
Okay, having established that love is an active practice of giving, we have to look at the actual mechanisms. What does this practice look like on a daily basis?
Fromm identifies 4 basic interconnected pillars that must be actively exercised in all forms of mature love: care, responsibility, respect, and knowledge.
Let's break down what these actually look like in practice, starting with care. It is defined as the active concern for the life and the growth of what we love.
Right. If someone claims they love flowers, but they consistently forget to water them, their claim of love is totally meaningless.
Which brings up the biblical story of Jonah, which Fromm uses to illustrate this beautifully.
Oh, the Jonah story is perfect for this. So Jonah is sitting outside the city of Nineveh, angry that God decided to spare the city. God causes a gourd tree to grow over Jonah to provide him shade.
And when the tree dies the very next day, Jonah weeps over it.
Yes. And God uses this to point out the hypocrisy. Jonah didn't love the people of Nineveh because he didn't labor for them. He didn't actively care for them.
Love and labor are inseparable. You love that for which you labor, and you labor for that which you love. Just caring for something isn't enough if you aren't willing to actually respond to its needs.
Which brings in the second pillar, responsibility.
Now, we usually hear that word and think of a burdensome duty imposed by a boss or societal expectation.
But the root of the word reveals its true meaning: the ability and readiness to respond. It is a completely voluntary act. You are responding to the needs, expressed or unexpressed, of another human being.
You recognize that their emotional and physical needs are your concern, but responsibility without boundaries easily devolves into domination, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. You might start trying to control a partner under the guise of taking care of them, deciding what is best for them and completely stifling their autonomy.
Which is exactly why responsibility must be balanced by the third pillar, respect.
The root of respect is respicer, which literally means to look at. It is the ability to see a person precisely as they uniquely are, not as you wish them to be.
You want them to grow and unfold for their own sake, in their own ways, not to serve your needs or alleviate your anxiety. Here's where it gets really interesting, though. There is an old French song from quotes.
L'amour est l'enfant de la liberté. Love is the child of freedom, never that of domination.
You can only truly respect someone if you yourself have achieved independence. If you can stand on your own 2 feet without needing the other person as a psychological crutch or an identity prosthetic, only then can you let them be completely free.
It requires immense security in your own identity.
And finally, we reach the 4th pillar, which ties it all together: knowledge. You cannot respect someone if you don't actually know them.
And this isn't superficial knowledge, like knowing their favorite movie or their coffee order. It is the ability to penetrate to the core of a person.
For example, imagine your partner snaps at you over something incredibly trivial, like, I don't know, leaving a dish in the sink.
Superficial knowledge only sees the outward manifestation. Unprovoked anger. You might react defensively.
But practiced deep knowledge allows you to see past the surface. You recognize that they are deeply exhausted, or feeling inadequate at work, or frightened about a financial issue.
You see the suffering or frightened person beneath the angry exterior.
That kind of deep knowledge addresses the fundamental human problem we started with. Ultimately, what every human being desires most is to know the secret of man.
We want to know who we are, and we desperately want to know the internal reality of the people around us.
But there are 2 distinct ways humans try to force that secret through.
Yes, the sadistic approach is brutal. The Russian writer Isaac Babel wrote a chilling story about an officer in the Civil War who slowly tramples a former enemy to death.
And the officer explains he doesn't just shoot the man because a bullet is too quick.
Right, he wants to truly know what life is, to forcefully extract the soul of the man through pure domination. But that sadistic way of knowing only destroys the secret.
If you tear a butterfly's wings off to understand how it flies, you are left with nothing but destruction. You gain data, but you destroy the life.
The loving way, the artful way, is entirely different. Love is the daring plunge into union. It is giving yourself over completely to the experience of another person.
It is the only act that genuinely answers our desperate quest to truly know ourselves and each other, transcending mere psychological analysis or intellectual thought.
It is the only reliable antidote to the terror of human isolation.
We have covered immense philosophical and psychological ground today. The central takeaway here is that love is fundamentally not a commodity you are shopping for on the personality market.
It is not a trapdoor you blindly fall through, hoping you land safely.
Love is the active, joyous practice of giving your vitality to someone else. It is a daily architecture built on the specific pillars of active care, voluntary responsibility, profound respect, and deep knowledge.
It is the single real way to escape the prison of separateness while maintaining the integrity of who you actually are.
And it demands dedication, patience, and supreme focus. No different than mastering a musical instrument or becoming a skilled physician.
It takes work, real intentional work.
If love truly is an art that requires constant, dedicated practice, I want you to take a hard look at your daily interactions. Think about the people closest to you. When you are with your partner, your family, or your friends, are you actively practicing your scales?
Are you intentionally flexing your muscles of care, responsibility, respect, and deep knowledge?
Or are you just sitting in the audience, passively waiting for the symphony of love to mysteriously start playing on its own? Keep diving deep into your own sources, keep asking the hard questions, and most importantly, start actively practicing the art in your own life. We'll see you next time.